1. The letter in the back of the drawer. The night of the move, I was alone, crouching on the floor of the old apartment, my knees aching from the pressure. The hardwood was a sea of broken-down cardboard boxes. Clothes, charging cables, and books were all tangled together, a perfect metaphor for the mess my life had become over the past few years. From the living room, a voice boomed, bouncing off the bare walls. "Cole, don't forget to clear out that dresser in the bedroom." I called back, my throat coated in dust. On it, the bedroom was empty except for that one old dresser, stubbornly hugging the wall like it refused to leave. I pulled the doors open, and the scent of old cedar and forgotten memories hit me. The bottom drawer was jammed shut. I yanked it twice, but it wouldn't budge. Finally, I braced my knee against the frame, gripped the handle with both hands, and pulled with everything I had. With a sharp crack, the drawer lurched open a few inches, showering the floor with its shavings. Behind it, a narrow gap had opened up, and in that gap, something yellowed was wedged. I froze for a second, then instinctively reached for it. My knuckles scraped against the rough wood, like I was trying to unearth a painful memory. I worked it out bit by bit. It was a letter, folded in half. The white paper was pressed flat from the years, but the edges were frayed. On the front, in a familiar script, were 2 words. For Cole. Her handwriting was clean and precise. She always pressed a little harder on the downstrokes, and the last letter of a word always had a tiny, distinctive hook. I stared at those 2 words, a strange sweat breaking out on my palms. Maya. This was the apartment Maya and I had picked out together right after college. I remembered her standing by the window in a white t-shirt, turning to me with a smile. "You think this place gets enough light for you to code your way to baldness?" "It's enough," I'd said. "Good," she laughed. "Then don't blame the apartment when you go bald." Then she left. She'd packed up everything, so completely it was like she was erasing herself. She even left a new toothbrush holder. I really believed there was nothing of hers left in this place. And now, on the last night, something she'd hidden had decided to show itself. I sank to the floor, my back against the rickety dresser. I held the letter, my heartbeat unsteady. "Hey man, we're almost out of time." One of the movers called from the doorway. "Give me 5 more minutes," I yelled back. My voice sounded steady, but I was anything but. I unfolded the letter. The first line was a date. June 30th, 2020. That was the day we'd had our worst fight. She'd slammed the door on her way out. I stayed up all night, my phone screen bright, waiting for a message that never came. It turned out she'd been in this room that night, too. Writing. Her handwriting was a little shaky, more rushed than usual. "Cole, today I really wanted to throw you out the window." I couldn't help but let out a short, sharp laugh, but my throat tightened. I kept reading, but I wanted to pull you back in even more. "You're so frustrating. You just retreat inside yourself and never tell me anything." I paced this room 5 times. By the 3rd lap, I started to think you might not come back. By the 5th, I tucked this letter in a place you would never, ever clean. If you ever find this, it means one of 2 things. 1, you finally started cleaning. 2, you're leaving this apartment. I stared at that line for a long time. The paper crinkled in my hand. She couldn't have known I'd managed to do both at the same time. The sound of packing tape being ripped and wrapped around boxes echoed from the living room. I read on. "I don't know if we'll still be together when you find this. If we are, just pretend you never saw it. Use it to prop up a wobbly table leg. If we're not, then just consider this one last lecture. You always say you're afraid you'll end up with nothing, but I think you already have so much. You have an apartment that gets sunshine, a pothose plant you've almost killed 3 times, but that's still hanging on, and 2 hands that can write lines of code no one understands, but that people pay you for. And you have a person who's kind of an idiot, who remembers everything you like to eat, who brings in your Amazon packages when you're on a business trip, and who stubbornly leave a light on for you even after a fight. That idiot's name is Maya." After that line, she'd drawn a tiny smiley face, 2 dots for eyes, and an upturned curve for a mouth. I swallowed hard. There was a small, faded watermark on the paper, the ink slightly blurred. There was no explanation, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly what it was. I never asked her how long she cried in this room by herself after our fight that night. I folded the letter back to its original shape, my fingertip tracing the name Maya over and over. My phone was lying next to me, covered in a thin layer of dust. I stared at the screen, and a childish thought flickered through my mind. If I called her right now, would she answer? We hadn't spoken in a year. The day we broke up, she deleted and blocked me everywhere. I never tried to reach out. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It was just that the words, "we're done," had been said with so much force that trying to take them back would have been a joke. But tonight, in this empty, hollowed-out apartment, fate had decided to hand me a letter she'd hidden away. It felt like a direct message from the universe. "Sir," the mover poked his head in. "This dresser. You want it, or should we break it down for scrap?" "Wait." I slid the letter into my wallet, into the deepest, most hidden pocket. The soft snap of the wallet closing felt like a decision. I picked up my phone and found her number. I'd never deleted it. I just changed the contact name. "Maya, do not call." 3 words that had been sitting in my phone for an entire year. I stared at them and managed a weak smile. My thumb hovered over the call button. One voice in my head screamed, "Don't do it. Don't make things complicated for both of you." Another voice asked, cold and sharp, "Then why did you keep the number?" I didn't give myself time to second-guess it. I pressed down. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, mechanical, calm, completely indifferent to the chaos in my veins. In the seconds it rang, 1,000 details flooded my mind. Maya humming to herself while hanging my shirts on the balcony. Maya, barely able to keep her eyes open, staying up with me while I pushed through project deadline. The last thing she said to me the day she left, her back turned to me. "You're going to have a great life, Cole. I just don't want to be in it anymore." The ringing suddenly stopped. A quiet "hello" came through the speaker. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't voicemail. It was her voice. I gripped the phone tighter, but my own voice was gone. I couldn't say a word. "Hello." Maya's voice came again, a little softer this time, as if through a thin fog. I opened my mouth, but my throat was too dry to make a sound. The silence stretched for 3 long seconds before my phone betrayed me with its silence. I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Cole." Just my name. That's all it took for my shoulders to tense up. "Yeah." I finally managed to push out. The apartment fell silent around me. The movers, sensing the shift, had quietly closed the bedroom door, muffling the sound from the living room. All I could hear was the faint hum of the circuit breaker. "You." Maya paused, as if she were opening a window or searching for the right words. "Why are you calling me?" I glanced at the hollowed-out dresser, then at the letter lying near my feet where I dropped it. "I'm moving," I said. "Moving?" "Yeah, the last of my stuff is going out tonight." She didn't reply right away. I could faintly hear the sound of blinds rustling in a breeze on her end. "Congratulations," she said, her laugh soft and airy. "You finally decided to leave that dump." When she said dump, her voice dropped low. I knew she wasn't talking about the apartment. I looked down, nudging a pile of wood shavings with the toe of my shoe. I found something behind the dresser. The other end went quiet. I could picture her, wherever she was, freezing for just a second. "What did you find?" she asked. "An envelope," I said, "with 2 words on it." I paused. "For Cole." The silence that followed was heavy, so absolute that I wondered if the call had dropped. I pulled the phone away from my ear, checked the screen, and brought it back. "I can't believe you actually cleaned behind the dresser," Maya said, her voice tight, but she was trying to laugh. "Knowing you, I figured you'd leave that for the next tenant to discover." "I wasn't cleaning," I said. The drawer was falling apart. I had to force it out. "Well, I guess fate gave you a little push then." She had the same old habit of using a joke to smooth over any awkwardness. I slid back down to the floor, leaning against the dresser in the same position I was in when I first read the letter. "Do you remember writing it?" "I remember," she answered almost immediately. "After we fought that day," Maya said, letting out a soft breath, "you slammed the door and left. I just walked in circles in that room. I got so dizzy I grabbed a piece of paper. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you give it to me? If you had seen it back then, you would have torn it to shreds on the spot." She laughed, but it had a watery sound to it. "So I decided to hide it. Figured either you'd never find it, or you'd find it a long, long time from now." "A long time," I repeated. "Yeah." She paused. "Long enough that maybe you'd have a new girlfriend. Long enough that you could stand in that room and just think we were a couple of silly kids back then." My thumb pressed hard against the edge of the letter. "Too bad," I said. "Right now, I just feel like an idiot." The line went quiet again. "Where are you now?" I asked. The question surprised me, as soon as it left my lips. I planned on making some polite small talk, proving we were both fine, and then hanging up gracefully. My brain, apparently, had other plans. "I'm home," Maya said. "Not on your L line anymore. I moved out way before you did." "Is it cold over there?" I blurted out, instantly regretting the dumb question. "Are you asking if I'm cold?" She laughed, genuinely amused. "It's probably colder where you are. That old place. You never did fix the draft from the windows." As she said it, she coughed lightly. That single sound brought back a flood of memories. Winter nights, me staring blankly at my monitor, her curled up on the couch under a blanket with a book, letting out a small, breathless cough every so often. I just assumed she had a weak immune system. I never asked for details. "Your throat sounds scratchy," I said. "Just a little allergies," Maya said dismissively. "Don't change the subject." Her words put me right back in my place. "So," she asked, "why did you call me?" There it was, the real question. A gust of wind whistled through a crack in the doorframe. I stared at that crack and felt a sudden, absurd urge to laugh. It took me this long to figure out something so simple. "I wanted to ask you," I said, "if you tore off the last part of the letter." I heard a sharp intake of breath on her end. "Where did you read up to?" she asked. I read to the part where you said, "That idiot's name is Maya." There was a half beat of silence. "The line after that was smudged," I said. "Just a watermark." She let out a soft "oh." "That must have been from when I was crying. Guess I didn't wipe it all away." "What were you crying about?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "What do you think?" Maya laughed again, a self-deprecating sound. "That night, I really thought you weren't coming back." I gripped my phone tighter. "But I did come back." "You came back," Maya said, "but we never went back to how we were before that night." Her words landed, and the room suddenly felt even emptier. It was as if the movers had come back and cleared out the echoes, too, leaving me alone in the silence. "What was the last line?" I asked. I don't know where I found the courage to push for it. My usual move would have been to hang up, then spend the next few hours torturing myself with a dozen different possible versions, ultimately settling on the one that was least damaging to my pride. Maya was silent for a long time. So long I thought she was going to hang up. "Are you sure you want to hear it?" she asked. "Yeah." I heard the sound of paper shuffling on her end. It sounded like she was opening a drawer, looking for something. "I kept a copy," she explained. "Bad habit. I made a carbon copy." I almost smiled. That was so her. Always doing these extra, unnecessary things. "The last sentence," she said, pausing. My grip on the letter tightened. "So," she asked, "does this count as you letting me know?" Her voice was even conversational, but it felt like a verdict. I looked up at the empty ceiling. The bare bulb was harsh, illuminating every crack in the plaster. "It counts," I said. "A year late. Better than never." The words were out before I could stop them. This wasn't the old Cole, the one who swallowed everything. The other end of the line was silent. After a moment, Maya sighed softly. "Are you busy right now?" I asked. "Not really." She paused. "Why?" "I still have a few things to wrap up here," I said, glancing at the scatterboxes. "After I'm done, I was thinking of grabbing a bite at that place on the corner." It was a little taco joint we used to go to all the time when we first moved in. The owner never wrote anything down, but he had a better memory than most servers with notepads. Silence again. I knew I'd been too direct. Just suddenly craving some tacos, I added, trying to backtrack. "Are you asking me to go with you?" she asked, cutting straight through my attempt at subtlety. She'd call my bluff. I decided to stop hedging. "If you're not busy." Maya didn't say no right away, but she didn't say yes either. "Let me think about it," she said. "You go ahead and finish up." "Okay." She didn't hang up. We were caught in a strange, silent limbo. I could hear the sound of running water on her end, the soft clink of glass on a table, the distant murmur of traffic, all the tiny, insignificant sounds that had once been the soundtrack of our life together. "Cole," she said suddenly. "Yeah. You said before that you just feel like an idiot." "Ido." "Well, right now, do you maybe feel like?" The me from back then wasn't so terrible after all. The question floated over the line and landed squarely in my chest. "I never thought you were terrible," I said. Maya laughed softly. "Even if you did, you never would have said it back then. I'm saying it now." "That must mean you're really leaving that place," she said under her breath. "People always get a little braver when they move." Her words made me smile, but the smile soured in my throat. "That taco place," she finally said, giving me an answer. "If I decide to go, I'll text you." "Okay." I took a deep breath, smoothing the letter out on my lap, trying to flatten the creases. This apartment had seen our arguments, our apologies, our silences. It had also hidden a letter that I found a year too late. Now it was being emptied out, but in this room, I got to hear her say my name again. And in a way, that felt like a long overdue answer to the version of myself who had waited up all night. The rest depended on whether or not we'd end up sharing those tacos. 3 at the taco shop, I hoped she'd be late. After the call ended, the room felt even more hollow. It was like the little bit of warmth the conversation had generated had been sucked out when I hit the red button. I stood up, my legs stiff. My foot landed on a loose screw on the floor, the metal digging painfully into the sole of my shoe. The mover knocked again. "Hey, man, the dresser. You want it moved in one piece, or should we break it down?" "In one piece," I said. "It can hold on a little longer." He glanced at the crack running down the side and muttered, "You two must have been close." I didn't answer. I just went to the balcony to get the last of my things. The pothose plant? This ridiculously resilient plant had fallen off the balcony twice, and I'd forgotten to water it in a near death once. Maya had cradled the pot and yelled at me for a solid 30 minutes. "If you were this careless with me, I would have broken up with you ages ago." Turns out, we did break up, and it had nothing to do with the pothose. I placed the plant in a cardboard box, my fingers brushing against a dry, withered leaf. "This box for bedroom miscellaneous?" a mover asked from the living room. "Just write the old place on it," I said without thinking. The sound of the marker scratching across the cardboard was soft, but it felt like a final stamp on this chapter of my life. One by one, the last items were carried out. The floor, now bare, revealed scuff marks and dust, like old, undignified secrets finally brought into the light. When the truck pulled away with the last load of furniture, the apartment was filled with nothing but echoes. I walked to the window and pushed it all the way open. A cold wind rushed in, making the blinds clatter. In that moment, a flood of small, insignificant memories came back to me. Maya standing at this window late at night, looking down at the street. "It's good that this neighborhood is a little dark," she'd said. "Helps you sleep better." Maya holding a new desk lamp, try to find the perfect spot on my desk. "I'm making you a night owl corner," she'd announced. The day of our big fight, she stood in front of this same window, arms crossed, her voice colder than the glass. "All you care about is your work. You don't care about me." Back then, I just thought she was being dramatic. Now, trying to recall her face from that day, all I could remember were her eyes, impossibly red. I took a breath and looked back at the empty room. The lights were on, but they couldn't seem to hold the space, spilling out into the emptiness. I pulled the keys from my pocket and set them on the entryway table. I'd carried this set for 3 years. The metal ring was worn smooth and shiny. "The new landlord will have these now," I said aloud. No one answered. I knew, of course, that it was too late to say that to anyone. Downstairs, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out almost instantly. A new message on the screen. "Maya, what time?" 4 simple words and a question mark. Like 2 friends meeting for a casual dinner. I stared at her name for a second before my brain caught up. I never told her when. "Me, 20 minutes. You?" "Maya, depends on traffic. If it's bad, you'll just have to be hungry for a little longer." She added a shrugging emoji. Classic Maya, using that casual tone to keep things light. I typed okay, deleted it, and just sent back "sounds good." The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and a wave of air smelling of damp cardboard and wet soil washed over me. I looked up at the building instinctively. I'd already closed the window to our old apartment. The light was still on. It looked like a life paused indefinitely. As I reached the edge of the complex, I decided not to call an Uber. The taco joint wasn't far. We used to walk there all the time. I knew that short walk by heart, right down to the loose paving stone that would splash mud on you after it rained. I shoved my phone in my pocket, zipped up my jacket, and started walking. The night air was colder than I expected, scraping against my face like fine grit sandpaper. As I passed the corner store next to our old building, the lights were still on. The owner was sitting on a stool, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I passed. "Where's your girlfriend?" The question was so casual, so routine, It felt like she'd asked it 100 times before. It took me a second to process. When Maya lived with me, she'd always stop to chat with the owner when we bought groceries. Once, I came in alone, and the owner asked, "Where's your girlfriend? Is she feeling better?" I just mumbled something about her being busy. Now, a year later, the same question. "We broke up," I said. The owner just nodded, not looking particularly surprised. "Moving out. Tonight." "Well, it's a new start then," she said. "Young people, you break up, you get back together. It's normal. Don't take it too hard." I managed a smile and a nod, though I didn't feel any lighter. Leaving the side street, the main road was lit by a string of streetlights. I saw the familiar red sign of the taco shop before I even got there. Manny's Tacos. I used to complain that the name was too generic. "They're selling tacos, not brand identity," Maya would say. I pushed the door open, and the smell of grilled meat, cilantro, and hot sauce hit me. The place was mostly empty, save for a table of construction workers in the corner, hunched over their plates. Manny was behind the counter. He saw me, did a quick double take, and then broke into a grin. "Hey, haven't seen your girlfriend in a while." The universe, it seemed, was not on my side tonight. I forced a smile. "Just me tonight. I'll have the usual." Manny got the message. He didn't ask any more questions, just yelled back to the kitchen. "One regular for the guy who likes it spicy." I sat at our usual spot, a small table by the window. It was drafty in the winter and got blasted by the sun in the summer. We always fought over who got the inside seat. Maya hated the cold, but she'd always pretend to be generous. "You work hard, you sit on the inside." In the end, I'd always be the one to physically push her into the warmer seat. I placed my phone on the table, screen up. The minutes ticked by. No new messages. I'd already glanced at the door 3 times by the time Manny brought my food over. "Same as always," he said. "Went a little lighter on the hot sauce for you." "Thanks." I looked down at the plate. 3 tacos, topped with cilantro and onions, steam rising from the meat. My glasses fogged up a little. I didn't eat right away. I just rolled the fork in my hands, over and over, staring at that plate for the first time in my life. I genuinely hoped someone would be late. As long as she was on her way, it meant she was still moving toward me. If a text came through saying, "Something came up, can't make it," then this meal would just be a sad, ceremonial end. 3 minutes later, my phone vibrated with a soft ding. My stomach clenched. I snatched it up. "Maya, almost there. Is Manny around?" For the first time all night, I felt like the world had decided to cut me a little slack. "Me, he's here. Just brought my food." "Maya, don't eat it all. Wait for me." She added an emoji of a little stick figure with its hand outstretched, trying to grab something. I flipped my phone face down on the table and took a deep breath. The door swung gently in the wind. A few minutes later, the glass door was pushed open from the outside. A gust of cold air swirled in. I looked up. Maya was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a light gray coat, her hair pulled back in a low ponytail, her face flushed from the cold. Her eyes scanned the small restaurant and landed on my table. Our gazes met across the room. Time seemed to stutter. She started walking toward me, the sound of her boots on the tiled floor a steady rhythm against my own frantic pulse. When she reached the table, she looked down at the tacos, which were already starting to lose their steam. "You haven't changed a bit," Maya said. "No matter how messed up you are, you still believe tacos must be eaten hot." I gripped my fork, my mouth twitching into a half-smile. "Well, hurry up and sit down," I said, "before you stare them into getting cold." Maya slid into the seat across from me, placing her purse on the empty chair beside her. She unwound her scarf, slowly acclimating to the warm, savory air of the small restaurant. "Still taste the same?" she asked. "Find out for yourself." I pushed the basket of tortilla chips toward her. She took one, snapping it crisply. She glanced at my plate. "Why'd you only get 3? "Wasn't sure you'd show up," I said. "Didn't want 2 plates to go to waste." Maya smirked. "Look at you, suddenly concerned about food waste." I didn't respond, just nudged my plate toward the center of the table. "Eat. You're not having any. You first." She picked up a taco, blew on it twice, and took a careful bite. She chewed for a moment, then frowned slightly. Still so spicy, but she took another bite anyway. I watched her, struck by how unfamiliar the scene felt. The old Maya would have immediately stolen the best-looking bits of steak from my plate. Tonight, she just ate her own, leaving mine untouched. "What are you staring at?" she asked, catching my gaze. Do I have salsa on my face? You forgot a line, I said. What line? You used to always say, Manny, more cilantro next time. Maya paused, then smiled. That was because you always ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. She drew out the word cheapest teasingly. I almost laughed, but managed to hold it in. I was broke right out of college, I said. You knew what was in my bank account. I know. She put down her taco and wiped her mouth with a napkin. That's why I always used to say I was craving that expensive steakhouse right after you got paid. You did that on purpose? I raised an eyebrow. Obviously. Maya took a sip of water, her voice lowering a little. I just wanted to see if you were willing to spend your money on me. A brief silence fell over the table. She'd said similar things during our fights back then, and I'd always heard it as an accusation, like she was keeping a ledger. Hearing it now, it sounded different. Well, you found out, didn't you? I said, yeah. She traced the rim of her paper cup with her finger. And after I found out, I realized it wasn't even that important. Then what was important? I asked. Whether you were willing to tell me the truth. She looked up at me, her gaze clear and direct. It wasn't sharp, but it made me shift in my seat. Like how you always used to say you were fine. I thought I was fine back then. I countered the defensiveness automatic. You were so stressed out you could barely breathe. You used to wake up from nightmares, Maya said. I still remember what you'd say in your sleep. I frowned. I did. You'd always say the same thing. She paused. I'm running out of time. Flickers of memory sparked in my mind. An impossible project deadline looming in an elevator. My desk lit up at 2 in the morning. Maya's hand on my back, her voice soft. You're having a nightmare. It's okay. So those things were real. I hadn't exaggerated them, hadn't misremembered. I thought you were asleep. I mumbled. There's a lot you thought, she said, her tone flat. It was more cutting than any of her yelling during our fights. I didn't argue. Someone came in, the bell on the door jingling, and someone else left. Manny was busy at the counter, his back a blurry silhouette against the steam from the kitchen. Where did you move? Maya asked, breaking the silence. Closer to the office, I said. 3 stops on the L. Saves you money on your transit card. Probably costs you more in hair. It was a casual jab, but I instinctively ran a hand through my hair. What about you? I asked. Are you really off that train line now? Yep. She nodded. I told you I wanted a change of scenery. To where? I got a place closer to the hospital. I froze. Are you sick? It's not a daily thing. She looked down, swirling the water in her cup as if stirring up something else entirely. Just regular checkups. Checkups for what? I pressed. Look, it's nothing major. She looked up, her expression clearly signaling she didn't want to get into it. You used to say I was a hypochondriac. That's because you were always complaining about headaches, chest pains, low blood sugar. I listed the symptoms, then stopped myself halfway through. Maya just looked at me. You remember all that pretty clearly. What good did remembering do? I gave a bitter laugh. I remembered, but I never asked you what was really wrong. During that time, I was terrified of hearing bad news. I was afraid that if she was diagnosed with something serious, I wouldn't have the time to be there for her. Afraid I wouldn't be able to fix anything and would just have to watch things get worse. So I pretended I didn't know. Back then, Maya began slowly. Even if there was something really wrong, I would have had to rely on you to guess. You never said anything, I said. Even if I had, you wouldn't have listened. She let out a small, self-mocking laugh. Do you remember that one time in this exact restaurant? I told you I felt like I couldn't hold on anymore. I frowned, digging through my memories, and found a faint echo of it. She'd only eaten 2 bites of her food that day, her fork resting in her plate, her hand trembling. At the time, I just thought she was being moody again. You said you were exhausted. I recalled that you didn't want to live like that anymore. Right. I thought you were trying to break up with me. And you immediately launched into a lecture, Maya finished for me, about how everyone our age is tired, how you wanted to quit your job too, but couldn't, how life is just hard for everyone. I fell silent. The scene was becoming clearer. You have a good memory, I said. It's a human flaw. We forget what we should and remember every little thing we shouldn't, she said, as if talking about someone else, but I knew she meant herself. So what were you really trying to say that day? I asked. I was trying to say that I needed you to come with me to a doctor's appointment. Maya stared at the now lukewarm tacos on my plate, her voice barely a whisper. But you didn't even look up from your food. You just said, everyone has to learn to handle their own shit. My chest felt like it had been hit with a hammer. I had said that. Exactly that. At the time, I thought it sounded mature, pragmatic. Hearing it now, it just sounded cruel. What happened after? I forced myself to ask. I went by myself. Maya offered a weak smile. Waited in line for an hour, saw the doctor for 5 minutes, got 2 prescriptions, and was told to come back in 6 months. Why didn't you tell me? My throat was tight. You were so busy, she said, looking at me. I was afraid you'd just give me the handle your own shit speech all over again. I had no response. The tacos on my plate, which had once been steaming, were now cold and slick with grease. So, when you broke up with me, was it because of that? I asked. No. She shook her head. That was just one of the moments. The real breaking point was the night you came home. Which night? The night of our worst fight. She used the word our, not your. You got home around 2 in the morning. I was waiting for you on the couch. The first thing you said was, "Why are you still up?" Like I was an inconvenience. My knuckles went white. I remembered that night. My head was swimming with unfinished tasks and angry client feedback. I was stretched to my breaking point. Seeing the living room lights still on had just set me off. You said something, Maya continued, her voice unervingly calm, as if she were recounting a story about strangers. You said, "I'm exhausted. I don't have the emotional bandwidth for this right now." Hearing the words from her mouth, in that same flat tone, was worse than remembering saying them myself. You know, she said, her eyes dropping to the table. In that moment, I suddenly felt like I wasn't your girlfriend. I was a ticking bomb. I was a liability you had to deal with outside of work. My mouth was dry. That's not. I started, but the explanation died in my throat. Maya looked up at me. I know that's not what you meant. I know you were just tired and anxious. But what you said was enough for me. It was enough for me to be sure of one thing. What? That you didn't need me. Her eyes were dark, the restaurant lights reflecting in them as tiny, distant points. You just didn't want to be alone. The words landed, and my breathing hitched. I realized that in all this time, I had never once asked for her version of that night. I was too busy remembering my own exhaustion, my own sense of being wronged. My reason for the breakup was always just my side of the story. "So why did you come here tonight?" I asked, the words an echo of her earlier question to me. Maya was quiet for a moment. She picked up her fork, then set it back down. "I wanted to see you," she said. "I wanted to see if you were actually doing okay." She said, okay, not better than me, or better without me. There was a complexity in that word. It wasn't a blessing, but it wasn't a curse, either. It was filled with things left unsaid. And I held her gaze. "What do you see?" "You move." She looked at me, her expression serious. "You finally left that apartment." For me, that's a good start. I tried to smile, but the expression died on my lips. "What about you?" I countered. "Are you doing okay?" Maya considered it. "Getting there," she said. "At least now I know when I need to see a doctor, when I need to turn off my phone, and when it's time to leave a place for good." She looked at me, and I know when to stop waiting for you to text back. The tacos on the table were completely cold now. The air was thick with the smells of cilantro and grilled meat. I couldn't tell if the heat rising in my chest was from the hot sauce or something else entirely. In the letter, I began slowly, your last line. It said, "At least let me know." "Yeah, well, this is me letting you know." "It is." Maya nodded. "But you need to figure out why you're letting me know." "Are you trying to make peace with the past?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Or are you trying to pull me back in, to become your emotional bandwidth again?" She watched me, a small smile playing on her lips. "You don't have to answer that right now," she said. "Just eat your tacos. You have to finish them, even if they're cold. After all," she added, "you don't always get a second chance to do things right." I finished the tacos. They were cold and the texture was wrong, but I ate every last bite. When Manny came to clear the table, he glanced between us. "Just you two tonight?" he asked, his tone casual, as if we were the same couple who used to come in every week. I nodded and pulled out my phone. "I'll get this." "I can pay for my own," Maya said, reaching for her purse. On impulse, I tapped my phone on the payment terminal. "My treat." "This doesn't exactly align with our current relationship status," she said, half joking. "Consider it a thank you for all the cheap tacos you ate with me back in the day," I replied. Manny laughed. "You're lucky you had a girlfriend willing to eat here in the first place. Don't get hung up on the bill." His comment made Maya smile, and she relaxed her grip on her purse. After the payment confirmation beeped, She slid her hands back into her coat pockets. Fine, she said. I owe you one next time. Next time. I latched onto the words. It's a polite expression, she added coolly. The wind outside the door was fierce. The moment we stepped out, the cold snaked its way into our collars. I pulled my scarf up higher. I'll walk you to the L station. Don't you live in the other direction? She asked, pointing back the way I'd come. Not anymore, I said. As of tonight, I'm technically homeless. Maya looked at me with a wry, unreadable smile. Okay, she said. Walk with me for a bit. The crosswalk signal at the corner blinked red. We stood side by side on the curb, the white stripes of the crosswalk worn and faded beneath our feet. Cars sped past, their headlights slicing through the dark. How's the new place? She asked. It's fine, I said. At least the dresser is new. Make sure you get a sturdy one this time. Maya glanced at me. Don't want you pulling out a drawer and finding someone else's hidden love letters. First, someone would have to want to hide a letter in my dresser. I forced a smile. Besides, I've learned my lesson. I'll be doing regular inspections from now on. For mold. For my own damn cluelessness. The joke landed with a heavy, searing truth. The red hand on the signal continued to glow. The wind whipped up from the street, making me feel hollowed out. Maya, I said, her name a small cloud of condensation in the air. Yeah. About that night. I trailed off, falling back into my old habit of circling the point. Which night? She asked. The night you waited for me on the couch. And the night you wrote that letter. I looked down at the toes of my shoes. When I came home and said that thing about emotional bandwidth, I was an asshole. I am sorry. I had rehearsed that apology in my head 1,000 times, always in some dignified, hypothetical future, a chance encounter years from now, or a moment when she had completely moved on. I never imagined I'd say it while waiting for traffic light to change. Maya just said, okay, her eyes fixed on the red light ahead. And for that time we went to the doctor, I pushed on, my jaw tight. For making you go to the hospital and wait in line alone. I'm sorry for that, too. That's not what you said back then. Her voice was quiet, but her words pinned my past self to the wall. Back then, I didn't even want to hear that you were going to the hospital, I admitted, taking a deep breath. The second I thought you might actually be sick, my first thought wasn't, how can I help? It was, what am I going to do? Points for honesty, she said flatly. I wasn't brave enough to be honest back then. I gave a humorless laugh. I was afraid that if I admitted I was that selfish, I wouldn't even be able to respect myself. The light turned green. The small crowd around us began to move. We walked with them in step but miles apart. On the other side of the street, I stopped. But since you asked tonight, I'll be honest, I said. I was drowning, and I couldn't handle everything. So I treated you like the one thing in my life that could be put on the back burner. It was a shitty way to handle things. Maya turned to look at me. Are you here for a public self-flogging session? Maybe. I looked toward the blue glow of the L station entrance down the block. You asked me earlier why I told you I was moving. I didn't have an answer then. I think I have one now. She listened, her expression unreadable in the dim light. I used to bury everything, I said, the words coming out in a rush. And the more I buried, the heavier it got, until I couldn't hold it anymore and it would just explode all over you. I let out a shaky breath. After you were gone, I realized that even if you don't talk about it, the weight doesn't just disappear. It just finds a different way to crush you. I turned to face her. So, when I was packing up, I knew I had to leave that apartment, and I had to leave us in that apartment. I just didn't want to do it without telling you. Maya blinked. I thought it was just an impulse call. It wasn't. Then what do you want, besides giving me a moving out report? She asked. Her question was even more direct this time. I was quiet for a few seconds. I want to take back the words emotional bandwidth, I said. It was a year late. I'm willing to pay interest. What kind of interest? Next time you're sick, or you're not okay, you don't have to worry about whether or not I have to work late. I met her eyes. You just tell me you're not okay. Whether I can actually be there for you. That's my problem to solve. You don't have to figure it all out for me beforehand anymore. My voice was trembling slightly. It wasn't for dramatic effect. It was the feeling of tearing away a layer of scar tissue I'd kept sealed shut for years. Maya didn't respond immediately. She just watched me, her gaze sweeping over my face. You know, she said slowly, if you had said that a year ago, we probably wouldn't have broken up. I couldn't speak. My own heartbeat was roaring in my ears. But it's not a year ago. She tilted her head, a small, sad smile on her face. It's today. The smile wasn't mocking, nor was it warm. It was the smile of two adults closing a book on a painful chapter. The flicker of hope I'd felt just moments before was gently extinguished. I've been seeing a therapist, she said, changing the subject. My therapist says timing is a huge part of relationships. Her. Anxiety disorder. Mild to moderate, she stated calmly. Plus some sleep issues. I'm on medication now, doing counseling. She tapped her temple. You always used to tell me to just relax. I wanted to. Turns out, some things can't be fixed with willpower alone. My fingertips went numb. Is it serious? I'm still here. She shrugged. At least now, I don't wake up in the middle of the night feeling like my heart is going to beat out of my chest. You used to. You thought I slept well? She looked at me. I had nightmares too, except mine weren't about work. They were about you disappearing. That hit harder than any diagnosis. I swallowed, but any words of comfort or apology felt cheap and useless. Don't worry, Maya said with a sudden, faint smile. I've learned not to tie my entire existence to another person anymore, including you. Her voice was soft when she said including you. There was no malice in it, just a statement of a hard-won fact. You just said that from now on. I could just tell you when I'm not okay, she continued. And that's nice to hear. But the first thing I've learned to do now is ask myself, besides him, what other options do I have? I can't bet everything on one person anymore. The risk is just too high. I knew she was using clinical, detached words like risk to soften the blow, but it still stung. The L station was just ahead. An electronic sign scrolled through arrival times. So, I accept your apology, Maya said finally. But it's not a coupon for getting back together. Her words were crystal clear. The best we can do right now is this. You finally understand what you did wrong, and I finally know that I can survive without you. She took a breath of the cold air. And that's good. It's better than before. I didn't argue. In that moment, I knew she was right. It was better. At least we were standing at the same intersection, finally able to have a complete conversation. So, can I? I started to ask if I could see her again, but the words changed shape on their way out. I'm keeping the letter, I said instead. I'll remember what you wrote. At least let me know. Okay. Maya nodded. Then consider your obligation fulfilled tonight. We're even. The bell announcing an arriving train chimed from the station entrance. The flow of people quickened, heading down the stairs. Maya adjusted the strap of her purse and gave me one last look. I have to go. She paused. Cole, don't wait. It's cold out here. Find your way back to your new place. It sounded like a dismissal, but it wasn't. She was drawing a line. You have your path. I have mine. Whether they would ever cross again was a question for another day. Okay, I said. Get home safe. Maya smiled, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the stream of people heading down the stairs. I stood there, watching until her light gray coat was swallowed by the entrance of the station. All that was left was the sign glowing above the stairs. In transa, it pointed down into the earth, and I stood in the biting wind, the neatly folded letter in my pocket now crumpled from my grip. I realized this night wasn't about rekindling a romance. It was about taking a piece of our history, one that had been wedged in the dark cracks of an old apartment, and finally bringing it out into the light of a lonely street lamp. Whether it would heal or fester, I didn't know. But at least, finally, I was willing to look at it. The letter on display, the lock on the new apartment door was stiff. The key made a sharp, unfamiliar click as it turned. I carried the last box inside and closed the door behind me, feeling a wave of disorientation. The place was a blank slate. No couch, no coffee table, nothing to suggest a life had been lived here. Just cardboard boxes piled in the middle of the living room and a new light fixture that made the white walls seem even brighter. I set the box down with a dull thud that vibrated through the floor. The keys to the old place were still in my pocket, a hard lump against my thigh. The property manager had told me to drop them off tomorrow, but I hadn't been able to bring myself to take them off my keychain yet. I walked through the empty rooms. The bedroom window was bigger than the old one, offering a view of the rooftops across the street. The kitchen was smaller, but the countertops were clean. The bathroom tiles were uncracked, and the man in the mirror looked a little more worn out than the one in the old apartment's mirror. One by one, I unpacked. Plates, bowls, pots, the potholes that had cheated death 3 times. I unwrapped them from their paper cocoons and placed them where they seemed to belong. The motions were practiced, as if I'd done this a dozen times before. I put the potholes on the living room windowsill, where the morning sun would hit it. It deserved a good spot. When all the big stuff was put away, only 2 small boxes remained. One was labeled miscellaneous. The other was blank. I knew what was inside the blank one. I knelt and peeled back the packing tape. The letter was lying right on top, next to my wallet, a near-perfect recreation of the moment I'd found it. Only this time, it wasn't an accident. I picked it up, weighing it in my hand. The edges were already soft from being handled. I didn't open it. Instead, I stood up and looked around the new apartment. The bedroom closet was new, its white doors still smelling faintly of paint. I pulled open the bottom drawer and looked inside. It was empty, clean to the point of being sterile. I hesitated for a second, then pushed the drawer closed. I turned and put the letter in the nightstand. Not in a hidden compartment or a dusty corner I'd never clean. I put it in the top drawer where my hand could find it easily. This is where it goes, I said to myself. No more hiding. My phone vibrated on the bed. It was the group chat from work, buzzing with messages about a new project. The team lead tagged everyone, reminding us about an early meeting tomorrow. I stared at the notifications. The old me would have swiped them away, silenced my phone, and pretended I hadn't seen them until someone called me out the next day. This time, I opened the message, long pressed the 9 a.m. meeting notification, and set a reminder. In the notes, I typed a message to myself. Stop pretending you didn't see it. That had been my approach to everything, not just work. I scrolled through my contacts and found another name, Alex. He was my college roommate, now in the same industry. The main difference between us was that he'd recognized he was struggling long before I did and had started seeing a therapist. Me, in a new place. A minute later, a voice message came through. You finally escaped that hellhole. Alex's voice was scratchy with sleep, but laced with his usual sarcasm. Congratulations on taking the first terrifying step. So, are we drinking to celebrate? Virtual drinks count. I typed back. Me, not tonight. Alex, have you been replaced by an alien? Me, I saw Maya tonight. A string of ellipses appeared, followed by an incoming call. I answered. Are you out of your mind? Alex asked without preamble. Found a letter she wrote when I was moving. I explained. So I called her. The line was quiet for a second. Damn man, he sighed. Just making that call puts you way ahead of where you used to be. We didn't get back together, I clarified. What? You think life is a rom-com? Alex shot back. Your progress is already in the top 10%. What about the other 90%? They never would have made the call. He paused. How are you feeling? I thought about it. Kind of shitty, I admitted. But it's a lighter kind of shitty than the old, suffocating kind. At least now I know why I feel shitty. That's something, Alex said. So, while you're in this rare state of self-awareness, are you going to do something useful? Like what? Like let me send you my therapist's contact info. His tone turned serious. And don't give me any of that. Everyone has to handle their own shit bullshit. He always knew exactly where to stick the knife. I leaned against the wall. Maya had mentioned she was in therapy. At the time, it had just made her feel more distant, like she had this whole part of her life I knew nothing about. Send it, I said. Say that again, Alex asked, incredulous. Send me the contact, I repeated. I'll add it myself. There was another pause. Okay, he said finally, but you better not delete it. If you do, I will personally drive to your new place and take a hammer to that new dresser of yours. The threat made me laugh. It was expensive. Then you better take this seriously. A few moments after we hung up, a contact card appeared in our chat. The profile picture was a simple photo of a coffee mug. The name was just 2 words. Dr. Evans. No professional title, no bio. I stared at the contact for a long time, my thumb hovering over the add button. In the past, my brain would have been flooded with objections. Don't be so dramatic. It's not that bad. You could be writing code instead of wasting time on this. Those voices were still there, but they were quieter now, more distant. I thought of the red light at the crosswalk. I thought of Maya, saying she was learning to ask for help from more than one person. Hello, I'm Cole Davis. I was referred by a friend. I typed. I hesitated, then added, I'd like to schedule a consultation. I hit send. The world didn't change. The room was still empty, the The walls were still white, and cars were still humming along the freeway outside. But it felt like a part of me that had been sealed up in the walls of the old apartment had finally been excavated and placed on the table. A few minutes later, a notification popped up. The friend request had been accepted. A message followed. Dr. Evans, hello, Cole. Your friend gave me a little background. Dr. Evans, if you're comfortable, could you tell me one thing you'd like to change right now? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen. I didn't dump the whole story about Maya, the apartment, and the letter on him. I just typed one sentence. When I'm struggling, I want to stop my first instinct from being to push people away. I reread it, then added one more line. And to stop treating them like an emotional cost. After sending it, I felt a strange nervousness like I was turning in a long overdue assignment. Understood, he replied. That's a good place to start. We can talk more about it. I set the phone aside. The room settled into a quiet rhythm of distant traffic and a low hum of a new air conditioner. I went to the kitchen and got a glass of water. The stream was strong and loud against the new stainless steel sink. The water was cold. I cupped some of my hands and splashed it on my face. When I got back to the bedroom, there was a new message on my phone. The contact name was Maya. My heart jumped. I picked it up. Maya, thanks for the apology tonight. The message had been sent 20 minutes ago. It was followed by 2 more. Maya, and just to let you know, today's checkup results were good. Maya, so I won't be needing to cash in on your "you can tell me you're not okay" offer just yet. She added a laughing crying emoji. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the 3 messages. The impulse to rush over and be with her, to see the report for myself, was still there. But this time, I didn't let it overwhelm my reason. I typed, "That's great news." Deleted it. Typed again. "I'm really relieved to hear the results were good. If you ever do have a day where you feel like you can't hold on, you can let me know, and if I'm in a position to help, I'll do my best to be there." I paused, then added one more sentence. "But I'm also working on making sure helping isn't just something I say." Send. The words came out more slowly than any project proposal I'd ever written. My fingers ached when I was done. There was no immediate reply. I put the phone on the nightstand and went to close the curtains. Outside, the city was still lit up. I could see the flicker of a TV in one window, a silhouette moving in another. The world hadn't stopped for my minor personal drama. The only thing that had changed was that now, standing in this new place, I understood something. I couldn't rewrite the past. I couldn't go back to the time when Maya told me everything. All I could do was make sure that the next time someone stood in front of me and said, "I don't think I can hold on," I wouldn't reply with, "Everyone has to handle their own shit." Even if all I could offer was, "Do you want me to wait with you at the hospital?" My phone buzzed. "Maya, thank you." 3 short words, followed by another sentence. "Maya, take care of yourself, too." I looked at the message and, for the first time, didn't feel the frantic need to reply immediately. It wasn't that it wasn't important. It was just that I finally understood that our connection didn't have to be proven by instant responses. I took out the letter and unfolded it again. I read the last line, "At least let me know," and added a silent reply in my head. "I told you," and I told myself. I folded the letter and put it back in the nightstand. This time, it wasn't a hidden secret. It was just a piece of paper I could touch whenever I reached for my phone in the morning. As I turned off the light, the sounds of the city continued outside my window. I lay in my new bed, staring at the blank ceiling, and knew with absolute certainty that when I woke up, I would be in a different place. Not the old apartment filled with arguments, silences, and tears, but a new place. A place where maybe I could learn not to plant any more bombs. 7. The man in the mirror. My first in-person therapy session was on a gray, overcast day, hardly the bright, hopeful setting for a new beginning. The walk from the L station took me down a quiet side street lined with old brick buildings, their facades peeling, their balconies adorned with towels flapping in the wind. I stopped in front of a modest building with a small sign, Lakeside Behavioral Health. The glass door was so clean it acted as a mirror. The man reflected in it had dark circles under his eyes, but a decent amount of hair, and was wearing a nondescript hoodie. He looked like any other office worker. Only I knew that the server inside his head was a mess of corrupted, unbacked-up files. I pushed the door open. The receptionist smiled, her voice soft, as if she were afraid of startling me. You must be Cole. Dr. Evans is waiting for you in room 3. I nodded and walked down the short hall. A schedule was posted on the door to room 3. From 9 to 10 o'clock, it read, in neat print, Cole Davis. I knocked. Come in. The voice from inside was calm and even. The room was small, furnished with 2 comfortable-looking armchairs and a small coffee table. A well-tended rubber plant sat in the corner, and a piece of abstract art with soothing colors hung on the wall. Dr. Evans, who was younger than I'd pictured, sat in the chair farther from the door. He wore simple black-framed glasses. Good morning, he said, standing to shake my hand. It's good to meet you. Morning, I said. My palm was damp. I sank into the other armchair. It was softer than the old couch in my apartment, and I felt myself sink in, suddenly unsure what to do with my face. On the table was a pitcher of water, 2 glasses, and a box of tissues. The tissues felt a little conspicuous. I averted my eyes. Did you find the place okay? Dr. Evans asked. It's a little hidden, I said. That's what most people say on their first visit, he smiled. But you were still on time. My friend told me you were a hard ass, so I didn't want to be late. I joked, trying to lighten the mood. His standards are just low, Dr. Evans replied smoothly. He was good at this. After the small talk, he looked at me. You mentioned in your message that you want to change your instinct to push people away when you're struggling, right? We can start there today. He opened a small notebook and picked up a pen. Can you tell me about a recent time you felt that way, but chose not to push someone away? I paused. Recent? Yes. Does the night I moved count? What do you think? Of course. The classic therapist move. Turn the question back on the patient. I recounted the story of that night, finding the letter, calling Maya, the cold tacos, leaving out some of the more painful details. When I got to the part about emotional bandwidth, my voice dropped. Why did you use those words? Dr. Evans asked. Because I was just so tired, I said, leaning back. Work was crushing me. The client was relentless. The project kept changing. I felt like I was running a marathon with no finish line. And what was your girlfriend in that scenario? She was. I stopped. The words Maya had used came back to me, but I found my own, equally unflattering description. She was the only person in my life I felt I could be completely unfiltered with. Unfiltered, he repeated. At work, I had to be competent, rational, the guy who could handle anything. With her, I could let myself be angry. I could ignore her feelings for a minute. My fingers clenched, because deep down I just assumed she'd never leave. And what happened? She left. I managed a grim smile, which, in retrospect, was a major flaw in my plan. At the time, did you recognize which of your words might be pushing her away? I don't have the emotional bandwidth for this. I stared at the glass of water on the table, at the way the light from the ceiling fixture reflected off its surface, cold and sterile. What did you see her as in that moment? Dr. Evans asked. As I struggled, then the word came. A liability. Her emotions were a cost. I elaborated, the words tasting like acid. Her needs were a cost. Her sadness made me sad, which was another cost. In my head, I had this invisible spreadsheet, and everything related to feelings went into the debit column. And what was in the asset column? Work. I answered without hesitation. If I could just finish the project, deliver on time, make more money, then I felt like I had some value. Everything else was a drain. Including yourself? Dr. Evans asked. I froze. You said she was a liability and work was an asset, he continued. Were you just the machine processing the transactions in between? Your own emotions, where did they fall on that spreadsheet? The question hit me harder than I expected. Before, I said, my voice thick, I saw my own emotions as a liability. That's why I buried everything. I was afraid if I ever let it out, I'd scare everyone away. What were you so afraid of that day? Losing her, I said instantly. The air in the room hung still. And yet, Dr. Evans said gently, everything you did was designed to push her out the door. I know, I said with a bitter laugh. Logically, it's insane. But you weren't operating on logic. You were operating on a pattern you learned a long time ago. He paused. Growing up, what happened when you showed you were struggling? The question was a stone thrown into a deep, still pond, and memories I had long suppressed rippled to the surface. Getting a bad grade in middle school, my parents spreading my test papers on the kitchen table, asking me why I couldn't just try harder. I felt so ashamed, but I said I was fine. Later, I cried into my pillow. From then on, I learned a lesson. The more you're hurting, the less you show it, I said aloud. Showing it just gets you in more trouble. So you started to turn everything inward, Dar? Evans said. It became a habit, a way to protect yourself. But now that you're an adult, that same coping mechanism is hurting the people around you, including yourself. I swallowed hard. It had never occurred to me that there was a line I could trace back, that this wasn't just some random flaw in my character. At some point, my eyes started to burn. I instinctively looked away toward the wall. Next to the abstract painting was a small, narrow mirror. It was angled just so that I could see my own reflection. The man in the mirror had red-rimmed eyes and a tightly clenched jaw. I see myself in the bathroom mirror every day, but that's usually while I'm on autopilot, brushing my teeth. This mirror was different. It reflected an adult man who was trying and failing to hold himself together. The sight was so pathetic, it was almost funny. What are you smiling at? Dr. Evans asked. I was trying to be so rational about all this, I said, but the mirror just called me out. It saw you were about to cry before you did. At that, the dam broke. It wasn't a dramatic, cinematic sob. It was just a sudden, hot welling in my eyes that I couldn't stop. Dr. Evans pushed the box of tissues toward me. His gesture was simple, without pity. It's okay to cry, he said. He didn't offer any empty platitudes. He just gave me permission. You probably haven't let yourself do that in front of someone in a very long time. No, I said, my voice rough as I pressed the tissue to my eye. Whenever I felt it coming, my first instinct was just to hide. Pretending to be okay was your armor, Dr. Evans said, but you're not a kid anymore. You don't have to use the same old armor. You can learn new ways to protect yourself. Like what? I asked. Like what you said when you first reached out, he reminded me. When you're struggling, don't automatically push people away. Give yourself another option. Before you push, you could try telling them you're not okay. Then, let them choose whether they want to stay. I looked at him. But that's just making my problems their burden. You see it as a burden, he countered. But if they choose to stay, that's their choice. You can't control it. What you can control is whether you stop making that decision for them. His words echoed what Maya had said that night. You don't have to figure it all out for me beforehand anymore. I was silent for a long time. Eventually, Dr. Evans glanced at the clock. Our time is about up for today, he said, closing his notebook. For our next session, I want you to think about a time in the coming week when you successfully didn't push someone away. If you're up for it, you could start by trying at work. At work, you said you tie all your self-worth to your job, he explained. It might be a good place to try doing something just a little bit differently. I nodded. As I left, I glanced in the mirror in the hallway one last time. My eyes were still red, but my expression was less rigid. I looked like someone who had just come up for air after being underwater for a very long time. That week, my job provided the perfect opportunity. A week before a new project launch, the client decided to completely change direction. My boss gathered us in a conference room and dumped a mountain of new requirements on us. This feature has to be added. That API needs to be rewritten, and the deadline hasn't changed. The air in the room grew thick with unspoken resentment. The old me would have stayed silent, cursed internally, and then quietly worked myself to the bone to get it done, inevitably taking out my stress on Maya later. But Maya wasn't there to be my pressure valve anymore. As the meeting wound down, everyone was quiet. My boss tossed his pen on the table. Okay, let's just make it happen. I know it's a lot. My body was already preparing to nod in agreement out of habit. But then I remembered what Dr. Evans had said. Try doing something just a little bit differently. My heart started to pound, but I raised my hand. I have something to say. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. My boss frowned. Go on, Cole. If we add all of these new features and the deadline doesn't move, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I can't guarantee the quality. I can't do it. This isn't about not wanting to work overtime, I continued, taking a breath. It's about the fact that, with our current resources, this timeline isn't realistic. The lead QA tester, usually the quietest person in the room, nodded. My team can't test all that in time either. Another developer chimed in. The API rewrite alone will take days. My boss rubbed his temples. Fine, he sighed. I'll talk to the client. But don't think this means you can relax. After the meeting, a coworker clapped me on the shoulder. That was brave, man. I was just saying what we were all thinking, I mumbled. Yeah, he smiled. But you were the one who actually said it. I thought of all the late nights I'd spent at my desk over the years, all the silent resentment I'd swallowed. You used to see yourself as just a machine for execution. Dr. Evans's voice echoed in my head. You can try being a human who has a voice. For the first time I had. Ate a cup of coffee and a different kind of promise Saturday morning. My alarm was set for 7, but I was awake at 6:30. The city was still waking up, painting the gap in my curtains a soft, hazy gray. I lay in bed for a moment, then reached for the nightstand. The letter was there. The paper was even softer now, the creases worn and familiar. My fingertip rested on the 2 words on the front. For Cole. I'll be on time, I whispered to the empty room. I made myself a scrambled egg, but could only manage a few bites. My stomach felt like it was full of rocks. The L ride was a blur, and when I emerged from the station, the hospital loomed in front of me, its glass facade reflecting the pale, unforgiving sky. I was 10 minutes early. The lobby was clean and quiet despite the steady stream of people. I sent Maya a text. I'm here. First floor lobby by the windows. She replied instantly. Maya, almost there, just parking. Look for the woman who looks like a human marshmallow. I smiled. My palms were sweating. A few minutes later, a blast of cold air announced the opening of the automatic doors. Maya walked in, bundled in a long, puffy coat, a scarf wrapped so high it covered half her face. Next to her was a woman with short hair, also wearing a mask, clutching a folder. They were talking as they walked. When they got closer, the friend saw me first. Is this the ex-boyfriend? She asked, her voice blunt. He can hear you, Maya said, exasperated. Don't be so loud. I stood up. I said, nodding to the friend. I'm Cole. I know, the woman said, pulling down her mask with a direct, friendly smile. I've heard her complain about you plenty of times. In any other situation, I would have wanted the floor to swallow me whole. But strangely, I wasn't embarrassed. Thanks for being here with her today, I said. No problem, she shrugged. I'm on physical support duty, holding paperwork, making sure she doesn't freak out. You're on emotional support. She pointed a thumb at me. Teamwork. Maya nudged her with an elbow. Stop scaring him. I'm going to go check in. The friend gave a little wave and headed for the registration desk. Finally, I could focus on Maya. How are you? Okay. She pulled her scarf down, revealing the tip of her nose. Only had a semi-sleepless night last night. That's an improvement, I said. You used to be an all-nighter. She paused, then a real smile touched her eyes. I'm surprised you remember my insomnia schedule. My memory's always been pretty good, I said, then added, I just used to apply to the wrong things. She sidestepped that comment, glancing around the lobby. Hospitals always have that same smell. Disinfectant, metal, and stale air conditioning. Can I get you a coffee? I asked. The doctor said I could have a little, she said, holding up a water bottle. I was going to stick to this, but then I figured I should let you buy me something. My honor. I went to the small cafe and came back with 2 cups of black coffee. They were warm in my hands. Maya was scrolling through her phone when I got back. Here, I said, placing one on the table next to her. She took it, her fingers brushing against the hot paper cup. Thanks. We sat in silence for a moment on the waiting room chairs, watching the names and numbers scroll across a large digital screen. Nervous? I asked. A little, she admitted, prying open the lid to let the steam escape. Mostly just afraid the doctor is going to pop out and say, actually, we've decided to do a much bigger, scarier surgery. You really know how to paint a picture. Well, can you say something reassuring? I hope the worst part of your day is the needle. The needle is a given. She rolled her eyes, but the tension in her shoulders eased a little. What about you? She asked, turning to me. You look more nervous than I am. Just woke up early, I deflected. Couldn't sleep. It was fine. I changed the subject. You have someone to take you home after, right? Yep. My friend's class got canceled. She gestured with her head toward the registration desk. She offered to stay the whole time. So, I'm just here for the coffee portion of the event, I said, nodding. Once you go in, I'll head out. You can stay or go, she said thoughtfully. But I do have one condition. Name it. You are not allowed to sit here in this lobby by yourself for 3 hours while I'm in there, she said, her gaze serious. If you're going to wait, you have to tell me first. Otherwise, you'll just be sitting here getting a backache, and I'll come out feeling guilty. It's an inefficient use of everyone's time. Dissected like that, it did sound pretty inefficient. Then I won't wait, I said. I'll walk you to the door, watch you go in, and leave. Okay, she said, visibly relieved. That's much more reasonable. We sat in a comfortable silence, the ambient sounds of the hospital filling the space. You mentioned you started seeing a therapist, I said, breaking the quiet. I did. Did you? Tell him about today. He asked if I had anything important coming up. I told him I had a procedure. What did he say? He told me to try and see this as something I'm doing for myself, she said with a small smile. Not to prove a point to anyone, not as a performance. Just taking care of myself. And how does it feel? I asked. It feels. She swirled the coffee in her cup, like I'm here today to take care of myself. And I'm allowing you to be a small part of that. She looked up at me. A part that ends when the coffee is gone. It was a boundary, clearly and kindly drawn. She was granting me access, but the permissions were limited. I can work with that, I nodded. I'll savor this coffee then. That made her laugh, a Rayal laugh that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. It was the same, but different. The undertone of default dependency was gone. In its place was a deliberate choice. Her friend returned from the desk, waving a piece of paper. All set. They said to be at the pre-op area in 15 minutes. She checked her watch. We still have time. Good, Maya said. I can keep pretending this is just a coffee date. A very glamorous one, her friend quipped. A hospital rendezvous. I clear my throat. Let's not call it that. What would you call it? She challenged, looking at me. A friendly meeting between former partners? Her directness was somehow refreshing. Whatever, I said, giving up. I took another sip of coffee. It was lukewarm now, but I didn't mind. How's work? Maya asked. The new project is still alive, I said. And I told my boss no in a meeting this week. And he stared at me for 5 seconds, then went and got the client to cut one of the features. Wow, her friend raised her eyebrows. That doesn't sound like the guy she described. The old you would have cursed him out in your head, Maya added, but smiled and said, I'll see what I can do. You knew that. You think you were subtle? She glanced at me. When you were stressed, your smile got really, really polite. Polite enough to be terrifying. I thought about it and realized she was right. What about you? I asked her. What do you do when you're stressed now? I talk to my therapist, she said simply. Or friend. Or sometimes I talk directly to the person who's stressing me out. I can attest to that, her friend chimed in. She's gotten very good at it. I found myself feeling a sense of relief. She was learning to build boundaries, to protect herself from the kind of silent implosion that had defined the end of our relationship. Do you think I'm harder to deal with now? Maya asked suddenly. Yes, I answered honestly. She looked taken aback for a second. But that's a good thing, I added. It's better than you bottling everything up until you explode. Have you been reading self-help books? She teased. I'm paying a lot for therapy, I countered. I might as well use some of the vocabulary. Her friend glanced between us, then stood up. I'm going to go find the right elevator bank. She gave us a knowing look and walked away. Cole, Maya said once we were alone. Yeah, if you hadn't found that letter the night you moved, do you think we'd be sitting here right now? I thought for a moment. No, I said. I'd probably still be in that apartment, pretending everything was fine. You'd probably be here alone. We'd just keep moving forward on our separate paths, maybe thinking about each other late at night and muttering, what an idiot, before rolling over and going to sleep. She smiled at my description. And now, we're still on our separate paths, I said. But we paused at an intersection to air some things out. The letter, the emotional bandwidth comment. She didn't reply, just finished the last of her coffee. A nurse called her name. Maya Thompson. Her friend jogged back over. That's us. Maya stood up, her movements deliberate. I'll walk you to the door, I said. We followed the nurse down a long, sterile hallway. As we approached a set of double doors marked preoperative area, authorized personnel only, she stopped. This is me, she said, pointing to a bench. Any further, and you're officially breaking the rules. Okay, I nodded. I'll watch you go in from here. The letter, she said suddenly. Do you have it with you? I instinctively felt my pocket. My wallet was there, but the letter was back in my new apartment. No. Good, she smiled. I'd be a little weirded out if you brought it to the hospital. Don't treat it like a talisman. It's not, I said. It's more like evidence. Proof that you were a part of my life. and proof that I was kind of a mess. Her expression softened. Well, maybe you should write one to yourself sometime. Write what? A letter to the future you who might forget all this, she said. So next time you start thinking of people as costs, you'll have a reminder. So you knew all along that letters were the best way to get through to me. Obviously. She took a step toward the doors, then turned back. Cole. Yeah. Thank you for coming today. This thank you felt different from the one in her text. This one was for the choice I had made this morning. And thank you for what you said the other night. It means I don't have to spend my time trying to rewrite our old conversations in my head anymore. My throat felt tight. From now on, the words you remember will be the ones I actually said. I'm willing to bear that cost. She smiled. Okay, she said. I'm going in. You should go. Don't stand around in the draft. She turned and walked toward the doors. A nurse held one open for her. Just before she stepped through, she looked back and gave me a small wave. It was a gesture of finality and of a new start. The doors swung shut, and she was gone. I watched the doors for a moment, took a deep breath, and turned to leave, honoring her request. Outside, the gray sky had broken just enough to let a patch of pale light through. It wasn't sunny, but it was less oppressive. As I descended the stairs into the L station, I pulled out my phone and sent her a text, knowing she wouldn't see it for a few hours. Me, heading home. By the time you get this, I'll probably be making dinner. Hope the end of your procedure feels a little like moving, leaving one space for another that's a better fit for you. I didn't wait for a reply. I put my phone away. Later that evening, back in my new apartment, I took her letter out of the nightstand and read it one more time. Then, I took out a clean sheet of paper. Maya, I wrote. I read your letter. Today, at the hospital, I think we finally cleared the air about that night. You don't have to reply to this. This one's for me as much as it is for you. I stopped and smiled to myself. I wasn't going to mail it. I wasn't going to hide it. I just folded it and placed it next to hers in the top drawer of my nightstand. Not a secret, just a reminder. The light in my new apartment was bright, illuminating the creases in the old paper. If I hadn't pulled on that broken drawer, I would have gone on believing I had done nothing wrong, blaming the past on everything but myself. Now, the mistake was mine to own. That phone call, that cold meal, that red light, that cup of hospital coffee, they were all part of the same story now. They weren't a fairy tale ending. They were just a reminder of a simple, difficult truth. If you want to love someone, you can't treat them like your personal shock absorber. And if you want to build a life, you have to stop treating your own feelings like a debt someone else owes you. Thinking that, I wasn't so afraid of tomorrow. The phone call I made that night hadn't just been to her. It had been a call to the part of myself that was finally ready to admit he had a problem.